propose it to be. So
it might go out of kind of community use.
Yes.
It's a distinct possibility.
It's a distinct. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Darby.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming here. Look, just a disclosure rather than a conflict. My daughter was riding there last Sunday. I'm familiar with the troubles of equestrian in Auckland, but my interest is in common with the public. I'm sure it's in common with you, Madam Chair. I'm aware that this property, because I'm hearing everything equestrian north of the bridge, this property is not recently on the market. This property has been on the market, informally, formally, off the market, back on the market for some years now. And the word is that the vendor has very high, or had maybe, high price expectations. Are you confident that the vendor is genuinely realistic and is not just maybe flushed out a willing trust to come to the party in the absence of the private sector not biting on the price tag?
I think that's a really good question to ask, and that's a question that as we were going along this line we were asking of ourselves. Where we sit is we do have a written agreement, which is an agreement in principle from the vendors that they will sell at an agreed price and upon agreed conditions. So we feel that moving from this meeting, if we were successful, we would very quickly have a purchase sale agreement consistent with those, well, exactly the same as those terms, and I can confirm I was part of the negotiation, as was Glenn, and we've since had that confirmed by the vendors.
It's based on, the price is based on robust valuations from two independent valuers and a small margin based on the estimation of the cost of the facilities and the upgrade. So it's not a price that is out of line with the market for that business.
Okay, so the prospect is the acquisition of land and a business.
Yes, correct.
And business with revenues, and you know what those revenues are now. Forecasts in your business case of what the potential revenues could be.
Yes.
Okay, and just we can ask some other questions when we move into public excluded amongst ourselves of officers, but I guess the other thing for me, Madam Chair, is, and for yourselves, is understanding how this facility, if it becomes under a trust and it becomes more accessible for the public, how that fits with Rodney District Council's acquisition of, I think you refer to it as the Wainui land on Derry Flat, which was identified specifically for equestrian facilities, which is undeveloped now, but I'm just wondering how those two marry up, and maybe that's one for the staff to answer later on.
Might be staff and also Brenda, but my understanding is that is not, and the experts might like to comment, it was bought for that, but actually I don't think it's really good for that at all. Do you know the Breens Road area that I'm talking about?
Breens Road, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. If I can comment, I think the key interest here is that this facility has already got all the jumping pads and all the parking pads all set up. To try and duplicate that onto the Greens Road, because we did have to consider this when we tried to put our plan together, and it financially just was not viable to try and create a new venue on that Greens Road property. We'd be well and truly in the 3 to 4 million just to get that facility up and running. So this was a business plan put together on an operating business, and really robustly we've gone through the figures, and we just couldn't duplicate this anywhere else. So that's the importance of this facility.
Okay, got that, thanks.
But I think, Leslie, could you perhaps tell us, I sort of know it, how many days a year can this be used? I mean, this is what makes it unique.
I mentioned about the surface, so the surface enables continued use, so it's currently used for formal events such as the formal show jumping and dressage, etc., for over 160 days of the year. In terms of its use, it could in fact be used 365 days of the year, not that we'd want to do anything on Christmas Day. But I can't underestimate, it's like it's a perfect gift of nature to provide us with it, because as many of you will be aware, I've come from hockey, and we've developed artificial turf in hockey. Now this surface can actually withstand greater use than what hockey can. Minimal maintenance.
Yep.
It's quite outstanding.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Thanks for your presentation, Leslie. I'm really interested in hearing a wee bit more in the opportunities that Woodhill opens up for women participating in the sport. And we get V8s in rugby, you know, almost every other week. So it's really nice to hear from a sport that encourages women. For example, how many of your 9,500 starts would have girls or women on the back of the horse?
Well, I couldn't say exactly how many of those 9,500, but I think for the gentleman in the room here, and sir, you who went to an event, you would see that it's predominantly women. So I think it's 75%.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's a gender equal sport. At the Olympics, there are no women's event or men's events. So it's a gender equal sport, and it is. I think it's about 70% female. In terms of participation.
They've got their own.
So the interesting thing, a little self-declaration here in my early 50s, returned to riding and competing, and there are many like me who do that. The
men have a very good time there.
Thank you. Sir John.
That was your point, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
How do we increase
Thank
participation
you.
for men?
Sir John.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I think the other thing about participation is based on an economic report done by the Horse of the Year in Hawke's Bay, that every horse rider has 2.4 helpers. Equestrian activities is a family activity because kids can't drive their own horse floats or their own horse trucks, and so 2.4 helpers per competitor is a fact.
Sir John.
Thank you. No brainer. If this was let go, it would be a shame to lose it for Auckland. My question is, what are you doing with Purnui now? Is that on the back burner now? Not pursuing that?
We see that Woodhill Sands is for the immediate need and the current need, and Puanui represents the aspirations of the future. So the Puanui Trust, I could say Astrid Lambert from the Puanui Trust is here in support of us. There is a letter of support. So both interests, I think, are mutually work together. Puanui would not be able to eventuate without Woodhill.
Thank you. Councillor and I.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Auckland needs this. The equine industry, we know internationally New Zealand has a place to play there, in the interest of China coming out of here. My only question is, what guarantees can you give the council that you will be able to meet your payments? Can you give us a clear indication how that's going to be done?
I think there's an extensive business case that has been presented, and my understanding is that the council officer will be able to present that in time. However, on the board we have an accountant here, Glenn Beale, and I'm sure Glenn can give you greater assurance as a professional than I can as a layperson.
So the main thing behind all of this is the fact that the sport has always paid its way individually as we go. And in this case, the business case we presented is based on income that's currently being generated. It's not future income, it's not an increase in income, it's based on the current income that's already being generated from the venue. So, you know, we'd have to go a lot worse before we couldn't pay our way and pay back the loans. So there is sufficient funds generated to repay the debt from current operations with no increase.
And it can only get better, so that's fine.
Just a further point to that, the budget, we have reported 9,500 horse starts. We budgeted off there being 500 less horse starts per annum. The horse starts over this current year, particularly with 300 being at a training event last weekend, I think will be probably higher than the 9,000, be over 10,000. So we have budgeted conservatively.
The other thing, if I can just say, with us representing on the back table here, we've got the interested parties from the show jumping groups and the dressage groups, and we've got the CEO from Equestrian Sports New Zealand, who are all committed to ensuring the continuation of this venue and supporting that their events will be run at this venue and will be continually run at these venues.
Thank you very much. That's great. I mean, all I was saying, we need it, and we've got to make sure it happens. Thank you.
Councillor Filipino.
Thank you, Chair, and I may have missed it when I went at the back to talk to one of the most important women in regards to your question. So I may have missed this. So when you talk about your membership and across Tāmaki Makaurau, I know that with the Māngere Pony Club, which was established in 1949, I know that there's quite a few members there. So what is the membership in regards to people going from Pony Club, I'm assuming it'll then gravitate up, but I just wanted to have a look at the membership because it's important, because through your presentation you've stated that it's it could be used for a regional facility. So I'm interested in that membership, a growing membership, not men, but growing membership.
Vicky Glynn, the CEO of Equestrian Sports New Zealand, is here, so she certainly knows more about membership than I have. Would you be accepting if I asked you to come forward? Vicky, would you like to come forward?
Equestrian Sports New Zealand has 7,000 active riding members. Pony Club has 14,000, we understand, and we have a close collaboration and ongoing collaboration with Pony Club to make sure that those 14,000 transition into the adult riding movement. Cool. Those numbers, of course, don't take into account what I would call recreational riders, often referred to as happy hackers. They also will be active around this region and are very active in Woodhill Forest.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, because I think it just needed that context around really the people, not only from the pony clubs that are around the region, but will then eventually get to show jumping, whether it be at Puhunui, that's still a dream, but whether it be at Puhunui or Woodhill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose in terms of disclosure, I was one of those lucky people who had horses in my background, and my sister is still an equestrian. However, I am looking forward to getting into some of the detail, and it's very reassuring to me to have Lee Redshaw as the officer who has prepared the report on this, and he's done an excellent job on what I can see. I recognise that this is the only fit-for-purpose facility of its kind, and in asking my question, I hope you're not going to take this the wrong way. There are some who have the perception that equestrian sports are elitist and only for those who are privileged. For those of us who have ridden, we know that's not the case. But I think it's a question that is often put to this council, and I'd like you to reply, if you can, on your understanding of, to the degree in which this is a sport that is accessible for many.
Thank you. We acknowledge that is a perception. So typically through rural New Zealand, the horse has been a very active part of young men and women's lives, and so the access to the sport has been is relatively easy. So within Auckland, it becomes that many who are associated with the sport are associated. In terms of affordability, a visual snapshot of Woodhill Sands would show you some rather rumpty trucks, the average age of the trucks being about 1983. Quite rusty, often green because they're kept outside. And so many who are involved with horses do so because they absolutely love the animal. They sacrifice immensely for them. So there is, in fact, there's the element of those ordinary New Zealander who participates through to more of the elitist. And I guess, I think Cindy's got something to add to that.
The demographic structure and the socio-economic structure is a little bit like Sky Television. Everyone at the top has it, and there are people at the top with very expensive trucks, but they put a lot of money into the regional economy. But down the bottom with Sky Television, it is the entertainment centre for the home. So equestrian sports is the same sort of barbell in shape, because the people at the other end are absolutely passionately committed. Their horses have better clothes than they do.
Yes.
And so that's the sort of comparison that we use with Sky Television, the two ends.
Madam Chair, you for the answers that we have received from our petitioners this morning, and I have much pleasure in moving the recommendations.
Thank you. I'll second those. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. I think we'll have a good discussion later on. Thank you very much, team. Thank you, Leslie. We will be in touch. Thank you. Local board input, as I said, Brenda might be here for the item. She's running a bit late. No extraordinary business, no notices of motion, so we have Letitia.